enabled.
Thank you for catching that.
Should be enabled.
Perfect. Great, so we're live and recording now. Can we let everyone into the waiting room? Okay. So we can start whenever you're ready. Valerie, you can give me the go.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Hello. My name is Emilie. I'm from the Career Advising and Transition Services at the McGill School of Continuing Studies. I'm so happy to be here today with my colleagues, Valerie, if you want to say hello.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Power Skills.
And Niall.
Hey everyone, it's an honor to be here.
Valerie and I will be co-moderating this session, and I'm going to be introducing Valerie in a little bit. First, I want to introduce you to Power Skills. Thank you so much for joining us. This is already the third edition of Power Skills. This year's theme is, or this edition's theme is Lives Transformed, Our Post-Pandemic Era. As you may or may not know, Power Skills is a free 4-day virtual career summit that's sure to inspire and connect you with such a dynamic series of amazing sessions. This edition, we're so excited to have 66 sessions on topics related to leadership, post-pandemic world, reskilling, upskilling, and professional development, and more. So before going ahead, I'd like to recognize that at CATS, we acknowledge that our work in Montreal takes place on unceded Indigenous lands, part of the Mohawk Nation, and I'd like to share a quick video with you. I'd like to just acknowledge that this land is known as a gathering space for many First Nations, and at Power Skills, we're so committed to use Summit as a place of gathering, connection, reconnection with everyone who's attending here. And this is a space to really empower all voices and perspectives by providing as well free and accessible learning opportunities and connections. I'm really excited to introduce our moderator for today's session. Not only is she our co-moderator for today, and just a reminder for who is logging on, just to mute yourself so just the audio is clear. So not only is she the moderator, she's also the mastermind behind this session's topic. And thanks to her, she's brought this fascinating panel together. A very big thank you to Valerie. She is our fellow career advisor. She is a creative business strategist. She's a facilitator, an amazing facilitator. She is completely driven to empower professionals who, as Simon Sinek says, to find their why. She's a continuous learner with a BA in law. She has a postgraduate diploma in business administration, management and operations, and a diploma in public relations. She's career educator certified. What isn't she? She's multi-talented, and she is also the brain and talent behind the Power Skills visuals, beautiful visuals. So I'm really lucky to call her my colleague and really happy to introduce her today.
Thank you so much, Emilie. That was an unexpected surprise. I wasn't expecting to be introduced so officially. And it's only right that I do Emilie Salvi justice as well. It's very rare, I feel, that sometimes you work in a special place where your teammates become your family. And I'm fortunate to have that. I'm fortunate to live that on a daily basis. Emilie Salvi is also a career advisor at the School of Continuing Studies. She is a learning and development strategist. She is, I would say, the heart of the CATS team. If there was anyone who makes you feel comfortable, makes you feel welcome, Emilie Salvi is that person in our team who reminds us every single day to be mindful, to stay present, and always to remain confident in terms of our skills and what we have to offer. So I'm equally blessed and thankful to be able to work with Emilie as well. Welcome everyone to our Power Skills session today. This is the first of our work transformation series during Power Skills, where we'll be talking about the workplace, organizations, how they have changed and evolved over the pandemic, how we ourselves can also impact positive change. We are extremely fortunate to have three powerhouse speakers today. They are true professionals in their own right, and we are fortunate that they were able to make the time today to join us to share their insights in terms of some of the changes, their experience during the pandemic, and hopefully to give us some tips and advice and strategies that we can use moving forward. The first speaker, they're going to introduce themselves. The first speaker is Samantha Bateman, the one and only Samantha Bateman. Sam?
The one and only. You're so funny. Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm Sam Bateman. I've been in recruitment for about 20 years now. I started off as an HR coordinator after getting a degree from McGill in political science. So if you're wondering what to do with that degree, talent acquisition actually became my profession. And so I've had almost 2 decades of placing talent in small, medium, and large organizations, both public and private, and just happy to be here today.
Thank you, Sam. We're thrilled to have you too. Next up is Samantha Chris.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here again this year and to see all of you, your Zoom tiles and your faces for those who are on camera. I am Samantha Chris. I am a TEDx speaker. I am an author, and I'm the head of people and culture here at Goldcast. Full disclosure, I'm relatively new to the HR and kind of people and culture space. I'm a marketer turned people and culture professional. So I'm bringing some change management experience, leadership training and consulting, as well as a strong communication background. So I think that there's going to be an array of different opinions here that I'm actually personally excited to be sitting in on this session myself. If I wasn't on the panel, I would be attending. So I think you guys are in for a real treat, and I'm really grateful to be part of it.
Thank you, Sam. And one of the reasons we really wanted you on this panel was this fresh perspective, working in this space right now and bringing all of your expertise in different areas as well. We're looking forward to your insights too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we have Andre Strogan. Hi, Andre.
Hi, and thank you. I'm very excited to be here as well. Maybe to introduce myself, I'll introduce myself maybe in the context of the theme of the transformation. I think it's something that played a big role in my professional and personal life. I'm a principal at a consulting firm called Juniper, where our focus is to help organizations transform and to become more agile, more responsive to the needs of their stakeholders through consulting and through different trainings that we offer. And at the same time, just in my personal life, I have had to go through a number of different transformations, career-wise as well. How I like to talk about it, maybe is that I'm on my third life right now, and sort of in Montreal and doing the consulting work that I do. In my previous life, I worked close to a decade in Alberta, as an engineer in project management, and then sort of my first life, sort of when first came to Canada, and sort of the transformation that took place, and then moving across Canada from the West, Vancouver to Alberta to Ontario, to now in Montreal. So lots of different ways to keep adjusting and keep transforming myself, moving into the future. And really, I guess I just wanted to mirror sort of like the sentiment from other panelists, that really excited to be here to more, not so much even to offer my opinion, but to talk or to hear the opinion of others and sort of learn from them as part of this process as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, and we'd love to kick off the first question on a little bit more. You've already shared a little bit more on this in terms of your own career journeys. Can you dive a little bit deeper and tell us how and where did you get started to get to where you are today? And we'd also, as a follow-up, love to know, what are you most excited about these days in your respective roles in HR leadership and change management? So I don't know who wants to begin. Maybe we can start with Sam.
Why me? So the first part of the question, in terms of how we got started, I mean, look, I don't know many recruiters who kind of got into this because they just grew up wanting to be a recruiter. It's really not the norm. Usually people will maybe go through HR and then they'll start off in talent acquisition, but a lot of us have kind of fallen into it. So look, I had done my degree at McGill in political science. I, at the time, wanted to go to law school, and you know, I think I was done by the time I got through 6 years finally before I got my degree. I think I was just done with school and needed a break, and I had a lot of different jobs that I was equally terrible at, right? So I had finally landed in a company that actually really and truly cared about their employees. And that was a game changer for me. It was a small, privately owned company that had kind of eventually gone through an acquisition. Monster was coming on the scene. So I'm dating myself a little bit, right? Going back a number of years. So back then, you know, people would post jobs in the newspaper. That was really how you were finding your job, or you would go through an agency. And so, like many other companies, we were finding talent working through agencies. We didn't have HR. We were 100 employees in financial services, economic forecasting firm. And I just said, you know what, why don't we stop using agencies? It's costing a lot of money. I had started off as an office coordinator, saw the bills, and I was like, Monsters come on the scene, can I try this? And they're like, yeah, whatever, go do this little project of yours. And we were hiring great talent. And I loved it because people are always nice to you when you have an opportunity for them. So I said, well, I'm going to go back to school and take some HR classes. And the company, you know, invested in me and they paid for those courses. And I was moved into an HR coordinator role. And then I realized I don't really want to hear people complain when they're here. I like to be at the first part of the story. And so I left the organization after 5 years, landed an agency, did agency work for 2 years. It wasn't for me. And I left 16 years ago to build to build Integra Consulting. And I would say that at the time, for many years, I wondered, what am I doing with this political science degree? It really has nothing to do with my career, but in many ways, it has so much to do with kind of the work that I'm doing now in terms of talking to people who are coming from different countries, understanding their realities, understanding, kind of what's motivated them or what they're looking for in another role, and just being very open. When we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, always being immersed in that, actually. And that's kind of lent itself very well to where I am today. And what I'm most excited about is that for the first time, we are seeing a shift in the market where it's now a candidate-driven market. And the war for talent, we've been talking about it for a long time and it never really came. We touched on it in 2019 a little bit, but it was nowhere near where it is today. And so I'm really excited that candidates are now in the driver's seat. And the shift is incredible. Not great for many organizations that don't get it. But it's really great for candidates that are going to be mindful of their journey, right? So it could be ridden with landmines, which we can talk about later, but for right now, it's pretty exciting.
That does sound really exciting. Thanks so much for sharing that. Andrew, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah, would love to. So, I mean, for myself, my journey is somewhat similar in the sense that there was a little bit of like leveraging some skills that might not necessarily be obvious to kind of like to lend itself to sort of like the present career. But I think in general, whenever we get experiences, we can always learn something that we can always leverage further on in our careers, and so like expands our different approaches. For me, I mean, I've been doing consulting for a number of years now, but like I mentioned, sort of have worked as an engineer for close to a decade prior to that. And sort of like the push to myself, or kind of what the inception of sort of going down this path was looking and experiencing the culture that was in the organizations that I was with, right? So I mean, a lot of engineering companies are not necessarily known, or they, especially a number of years back, they weren't known for their progressive types of cultures that were very, very inclusive. And that was something that didn't necessarily, I didn't experience it in a very good way. And I wanted to be part of the change. I wanted to help organizations to actually transform and to change those environments within which people are working. And so that was essentially the push for myself to do an MBA. And through that connection, through the program, establish the different connections, which led me to the consulting career that I have right now in this particular field, right? I mean, there's many different directions for doing consulting, but I find this is the one that's the most fascinating because, when there's definitely interest in doing and helping to make choices about specific problems. But when you look at sort of organizations, that's a change that you're creating sort of on a systemic level within an organization that helps everybody to achieve better results, right? So not only is it to a specific purpose or specific question that you're answering, but you're lifting sort of like all of the ships, hopefully, as part of the work. And I guess maybe the last point in terms of my career, I think that, and that's something very important for everybody to take note, or kind of to keep in mind, right, is that in my mind, there's no such thing as a bad experience, right, or it's irrelevant experience. There's always things that we can lend and leverage for what we want to do in our next career, or in a different way. So especially when we're talking, let's say, engineering, which is a very, very specific, like I was in charge of infrastructure development, so actually building things. Whereas right now we're working with culture, with organizations that can seem like a very, very different types of things. But fundamentally, a lot of the skills that you use in one carry over to the other one, right? And it's looking down a little bit deeper in terms of what skills are you actually building, and then how can you leverage those to kind of like to transform, or to shift your career, to shift your focus, to do something different, right? In terms of being sort of very excited about something, I think that what I'm excited the most is that in many ways, we're heading towards uncharted territory. And so one of the big things that I get excited about and that we do has to do with innovation and helping to come up with new ways of doing things, new ways of working. And so it's definitely can be a little bit of scary time for some people, for some organizations, because we don't know what's going to happen. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to create something new, something different, and hopefully something better.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's great to learn that you've always been wanting to make an impact throughout your career. That's awesome. Thank you. And Samantha, Chris.
Thank you. I've had a very, very different path. So I studied youth and adult correctional intervention, which is similar to criminology. We don't have that here in English, so it's a comparable program. My first job out of school was as an addictions counselor. I was in that role as of 19 years old and found it really, really difficult to separate work from home and like my work life from my home life, right? And which work from home has a very different meaning these days, but hard time separating work from home. And I found that I had the book smarts and the tools to be in that field, but really didn't have the life experience to be dealing with some of the very difficult conversations that I was having, and trying to help people who were battling addictions older than I was a huge undertaking. And as much as I loved being in the field, I didn't feel that ultimately it was one that I can thrive in and really add the most value. And kind of went back to the drawing board after having put all my eggs in that basket. It sounds like a little bit of a weird childhood dream, but I really saw myself in such a field from a very, very young age, and felt very lost and very confused with where I was going. And it was in a random drive to the grocery store that I was with a friend and thinking, well, what do I do now? And she was like, well, you're great with people and you like to make things look pretty. Have you ever thought of event planning? I was like, no, but that's a great idea. And I just jumped right in. I did a summer of interning as a wedding planner, fell in love with events, found out that I was actually quite good at it. And when an opportunity came up at a tech company to lead their corporate events, I thought, well, I have wedding planner and addictions counselor on my resume, so I'm going to give it a go, if only to beef up my CV. And if it doesn't work, then I know that I like it and I can come back to this. And I really grew up kind of in corporate. I was in a marketing team and I started as the events coordinator, eventually evolved into the manager and the director, and really learned everything there was to know about print, radio, TV, online, email marketing, and became a little bit of a jack of all trades and stayed in that field for some time. And eventually decided, I'm helping on a campaign level. And the position I was in, I was really fortunate to be traveling the world with the executive team. And I got a peek behind the curtain into how, it seemed true anyway, what they say, that it really is lonely at the top. And there was an executive team who didn't have all the answers, who couldn't feel like, or they didn't feel that they could express that to their team. And as such, a lot of communication was falling through the cracks, wasn't happening well. People were having a hard time navigating change, connecting with their managers. And I thought there's a real big opportunity here for me to do this at scale. And so I used that opportunity to kind of start to learn the ropes of change management and leadership and communication, and ultimately went on to start my own practice as a consultant, helping companies do the same. And it was not long after I had made my side hustle, my main hustle, that Jakub, who's on this call, reached out, who was working with Goldcast, and said, hey, Sam, we did this refer-a-thon thing and your name came up a couple times, and I thought it would be interesting to hop on a coffee chat and see if you're interested in collaborating. So I'm thinking, man, this is going to be great. I'm going to land Goldcast as a client. And Jakub is thinking, this is going to be great. We're going to get Sam to come work for the team. So we can see who won that battle. I'm with Goldcast and loving it. It was the best decision. But anyone looking at my, history on paper, it might be looking like it's all over the map. And honestly, where I'm at today, leading people and culture, I don't feel that I'm in the business of recruitment. I feel that I'm in the business of connecting dots. And that's what I've been doing my whole career, whether it was as an addictions counselor, as an event planner, as a marketer. I help people get from where they are to where they want to be. And I feel that in this role as the head of people and culture, and really having talent and recruitment and hiring under that umbrella. It's an extension of that. It's an extension of me. And I'm most excited that I'm at this place, at this company, at this time in my life, because as we're all navigating, what is our new normal or not normal, but whatever this new landscape looks like, that's what I'm coming into. That this is all I know. And so I kind of feel like a pioneer, and that the team I'm working with is really blazing the trails, excuse me, as far as what talent acquisition could look like in this time without the preconceived notion or history of how it's been and how it ought to be. So we're really coming in with a blank slate. And I think this is a really exciting opportunity, albeit a challenging one, right? We can't ignore the fact that there was a world of HR and talent acquisition before we joined it. But I think that there's an opportunity to really create something special and feel that we're at the forefront of making some significant changes. And as you've seen as a trend with some of the other panelists, leveraging strengths and past experiences into forming what you're currently doing is instrumental in making this work for you and your team, because however different our experiences are, we bring forward lessons and insight that can really help change things for better.
Thank you, all three of you, for sharing your story. How inspiring. I think one of the things that has stood out the most for me listening to each of you is the power of transferable skills. No matter where it is that we start, you accumulate those experiences and the skills that you're building along the way. And it's very impressive to see where you've all landed up to date. And thanks to LinkedIn, we get to continue to watch you grow professionally, and the sky seems to be the limit for all of you. So thank you for sharing your stories. What we'd like to do is get a pulse of the audience to see kind of who's in the audience, and if any of the, I'm gonna need help launching the first poll, but we'd like to ask you a question in terms of your profession. Are you in HR or change management? Are you in senior leadership? Are you an employee in respective industries and respective roles? Are you a student perhaps who is aspiring to enter the world of HR and change management at some point? Okay, that's not working. Okay, so what we could do is, if you feel comfortable to share that in the chat, it would be great to get a sense of who's in the audience. So far, we have Julia, who shared she's a headhunter and self-employed. Welcome, Julia. Thank you so much. Jessica is in business, people ops, business partner. Welcome. We have Aman, who's a student. Welcome, Aman. We have oh, amazing. So Sam, you're Jakub, I believe, is a headhunter in Samantha Chris's team. We have Marion, who's an employment counselor and career development teacher. We have Sandra, who we love and adore in the CATS community, who is in HR and in between opportunities. We have Fernand in talent acquisitions, former management and operations and people leadership. Wow. Nicole is an OD consultant. So we really have a wide range of people in different fields. We have Nadeem, who's a student and a law grad who's switching to HR. So you're definitely in the right place in terms of getting a sense of the current landscape and some of the opportunities and challenges as well. But we're going to focus on opportunities today and talk positive, workable strategies. So thank you and welcome. We have Suraba, who's a banking compliance professional. So it's really great. Thank you all so much for sharing this. This is such a wide range of professions and industries. So this is really, really good. Thank you for sharing that. So our next question, we're going to get into the meat of things, right? It's a theme that I like to call shifting from today to tomorrow. So 2020 rocked many business models with changing priorities and plans as business leaders scramble to navigate a rapidly changing landscape. For many organizations, this included learning to face social justice movements, shifting to full-time remote staff, figuring out how to best support employees' well-being, managing a hybrid workforce, while some believe that 2021 is where we're going to start establishing some sense of stability and going back to normal. However, we've noticed that this year has been very much about transitions. And we'd like to know from our panelists, how has the pandemic led to the need to rethink and reinvent the way that we live, work, and do business? Andre, if you'd like to go first.
Sure, thanks, Valerie. I think this is a very good question and sort of is very large in scope. So I'm sure the other panelists will have their own view on it. And I guess how I'd like to maybe start is that for me, from my viewpoint, the pandemic, what it did is it amplified a lot of the existing faults. So there were a lot of faults in the system, in the way of companies, organizations were operating, that were there, but we could work around them, or we could sort of like work through them because of the stability that was present, or the more of the stability that was present. And the pandemic and all of the other different things that happened along the same at the same time, they introduced a lot more instability to the system. And so what that meant is, like you mentioned, is transition. Organizations had to deal with change. They had to respond to change. But unfortunately, and this was something that previously we started seeing a trend for organizations to reinvent or change the way that they deal with different changes, or kind of like respond to the outside, the external forces. But this really put the pressure on them, and the organizations that were not built to respond to change effectively and quickly and to adapt, those are the ones that sort of like suffered the most. And so what we're seeing right now, right, is this greater push to be able to change into the future, right? To become more agile, to become more responsive, to become more aligned as well, right? Because as things are happening, things can be happening at a different pace at different parts of the organization. And so you still have to keep that alignment to be able to keep moving forward in the same direction. And so this is, I guess, from my perspective, this is where a lot of the sort of the focus is for organizations, is how do we become more agile? How do we become more maybe distributed in our decision making? How do we create those communications, or how do we optimize that communication to make sure that we're still able to move in the right direction and getting the right information to the right people to make the decisions? And so in the context of potentially also, people management in this case, what that means is that there's certain skills that people potentially in some organizations didn't have that now are becoming more important. What we're seeing, especially right with some of the organizations that we're working, as they're looking to restructure and to change how they do the work, and a lot of that decision making is being delegated to the people who have not normally been in a position to be able to make decisions, right? And so, or dealing with ambiguity that comes with making decisions with imperfect information. And so all of those things are coming to the forefront, both from the structural perspective of how do we actually organize our structure, our organization, to be able to deal and respond to the change that we're going to be seeing into the future. And on the other side is, how do we make sure that even within, if we have the structure, the people that are going to be working with us and working through all of this, that they're going to have the right skills and the right mindsets to work within that structure, because those are both two sides of the coin. I mean, if you address the structure, but people are not aligned to what we want to achieve or how we want to achieve it, it's not going to work. And likewise, if you start focus on the culture and the mindsets, people will very quickly become frustrated if the structure doesn't allow them to actually do what we would like them to do.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. It's really insightful, and it's got me thinking the wheels are turning on this end. Samantha, Chris?
Can I trouble you to re-ask the question, because that was such a good answer. I'm getting caught up in Andrew's answer. I'm like, yeah, I could build on some of it, but I want to get back to the core of the question just so I make sure I'm on the right track.
No worries at all. So 2020 rocked many business models with changing priorities and plans as business leaders scrambled to navigate a rapidly changing landscape. From social justice movements to shifting from full-time remote staff, figuring out how to best support employees' well-being, managing a hybrid workforce. How do you see the pandemic has forced us to rethink and reinvent the way that we live, work, and do business?
Such a juicy question. I think organizationally, what companies are seeing is that their culture is not necessarily what they say their culture is. I think the true culture of organizations are emerging, for better or for worse, and there is an emphasis on what employees are saying. I think we've always valued our employees, perhaps some companies more than others, but I think we'd like to believe that our employees and team members are extremely valuable. We know that we can't serve our customers, sell our products, whatever the case is, without our employees. But I think now more than ever, the employee voice matters, and how we feel about how the culture is manifesting organically during this time. I think it's shifted. I think people are more vocal in bringing their concerns forward. And it's given people reason to pause and reflect, is this a culture I want to be part of? Particularly because, as we're seeing, doors are opening for international companies who are looking to hire more remote, who are open to bringing on a more remote workforce. The opportunities are plentiful for our team members. And I think there is a greater sense of empowerment. Now I'm seeing both sides, right? I do still see that there's a lot of fear and hesitation in shaking the boat, because the future of the company is uncertain, or their roles. And so there are still ecosystems in which we're kind of playing it safe. On the flip side, or on the other end of the spectrum, I do see a great sense of empowerment, of recognizing what other companies are doing, what other colleagues, peers, family members, friends are now having access to, and are able to get by simply raising their concerns and bringing things forward. And I think that what's going to change, we're starting to see it, but I think what will become even more evident is that, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir here, but the culture is not what we put on a poster. It's not what we put in the handbook. It's what we are living and breathing, and that is changing in real time. And our expectations and our policies and the ways in which we communicate and empower our team needs to evolve with it. So from an organizational perspective, I see that. I see even the candidates who I'm interviewing and who are coming in with a greater sense of what they want, of how they want to impact an organization. And I think from what I'm seeing anyway, that they're taking greater risks, even if skill sets are not perfectly aligned, if they see that they are aligned on a mission level, on a vision level with what we're doing here, they're going for it. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, of people who want to align themselves with companies in which they feel value them, and this is going to need to be, we at Goldcast have a show, don't tell kind of philosophy. And so I think that organizations, and I sincerely hope that becomes the trend, that despite what's put on the website and, shared at career fairs, is that these are things that are felt in the micro moments, in the moments that really count, in the moments that matter. And the more that people can feel that they have a piece of the puzzle that will ultimately paint the big picture that they want to co-create and be part of, that we'll have stronger cultures, we'll have companies that can better attract and retain talent, and we'll have employees who genuinely feel much more fulfilled being part of that mission. It sounds a little idealistic. I understand it, it sounds a little rainbows and butterflies, but I start to see that the wheels are in motion, and the appetite for that is there. And I think we can keep the momentum going, provided we have clear lines of communication, because I think the days of top-down communication are over, or slowly those walls are slowly starting to come down, but it's not enough to say that. We need to show that in our actions. We need to make space for those conversations and lead by example and showing that it's okay. It's okay to challenge what has existed. It's okay to bring new ideas forward, to try new things. And that's something that I think organizations will have to become more comfortable with, is that not everything that will be attempted will be successful. And rethinking our relationship with failure, I think, is going to be important as we navigate this new world.
Thank you so much, Samantha. I love that. Being uncomfortable with failure, I think we put a lot of emphasis on not making mistakes. And we're definitely in a time where we have to try out new things. We have to test things out, and it's not always going to be work, and it's not always going to work, and to be okay with that. So thank you for sharing. Sam?
Such great answers. Oh my goodness. And so many ideas are kind of coming in my head as I heard both Andrea and Samantha talk about. Look, we start every conversation here with, how are you? How are your loved ones? And how have you gotten through the last year and a half? I'm not talking to any prospective candidates without asking that question first, right? It's the human above all else. We have all gone through hell. I don't care if you had a job, you didn't have a job, you're healthier. It's been a tough year and a half. If anything, it's shown us and the organizations that we work with, right, that people are a lot more resilient than we even thought possible. And in all honesty, there are people who've gone through much worse, right, in life. We were in our homes. There's not bombs falling. We weren't in a food line. Like, it's just, but it was still hard, right? What I'm seeing is a lot of organizations have breached trust. To me, trust is the foundation of any relationship. And that goes for the relationships that employees have with their companies. And when you think about why people, you think about the mass resignations, the great resignation that's going on, a lot of that has to do with people are exhausted. They want to figure out what they want to do in their next step, but there's also been a breach of trust. And, when we're recruiting, it's always about, what's the corporate hurt? Like, why are we having this conversation? What's going on? And time again, it comes down to, they don't trust the organization they're working for, in terms of they haven't been communicating effectively. They don't know where they stand for the future. They were hired into a role that, I've spoken with people who literally just got started in an organization a month or two ago, and they're already looking to leave because the role isn't what was positioned, right? That's got to end. People don't trust just because you have a big name. It doesn't mean anything anymore, because some of the largest corporations went through massive restructurings during the pandemic, right? And some smaller organizations, even though they were, maxed out and they had to go through, credit lines, and they tried to keep their employees. So I think that there's two things happening right now. On the one hand, employees are saying, I'm exhausted. We're dealing with more work, less staff, because we're going through this pénurie de talent, like a lack of talent on the market. And they're also feeling like that culture isn't as strong, right? They are not tied to the organization, or they're thinking in the same way. They feel that they're not included in some of the decision-making, or they're not involved in terms of the communication that's flowing. What's happening with my job? What's happening to the future of the company? What does it mean in terms of my own development within the organization? So trust and communication kind of go hand in hand. And if you weren't a communicative manager before COVID, there's no way you're going to do a great job now, right? And so those breaks, as Andre had mentioned earlier, are really starting to show up in full force now. On the organizational side, what we're seeing a lot of is companies are very stressed about the recruitment piece. So talent acquisition and talent engagement, right? So, telling an employee that you're valued and we're going to give you more money when they have an offer in hand, it's a little bit too late. And some people will accept it because they think better the evil I know than the evil I don't. But once they've kind of put in their head that, am I really happy here? Is it really about the money? You know, maybe I need to stay here now because I don't know what's going on in September. What if my kids are sent back home? We don't know what's happening with the Delta variant, but you're not going to be able to retain those people long-term if you don't get your ducks in a row. Onboarding was always horribly done, right? For most organizations, onboarding was an afterthought. Now it's even worse. You can have the best systems, the best products, the best services, but if you don't have the people behind them, selling them and supporting your clients, your organization is not going to be successful for very long. So there's a lot of things kind of happening all at the same time. And for me, I see it all from a perspective of talent. And, you know, in terms of the values of communication and trust, number one.
That was just, thank you so much for all three of your responses. I don't know if you see the chat right now, people are agreeing. They feel that you're really speaking to their experiences and reality. So thank you so much. Lots of great comments and questions are also being shared. So during the question period, we'll bring those up. We have a second poll that we want to launch. Nayo, if you can go for it, great, thank you. Thank you, Guy, for your question. We'll add that for sure.
$38 out of 38.
Okay, so it's been launched because on my end, I didn't see that. Okay, great. And feel free, Nayo, if you want to just read the results. I don't actually see
No
the results
problem.
on my- Yeah.
So I'm happy with how my employer has handled the pandemic. So 18% strongly agree, 26% somewhat agree, 15% are neutral, 13% somewhat disagree, 8% strongly disagree, and 21% aren't sure, are not applicable. Great poll. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. This is really helpful in knowing where everyone's at in terms of, you know, if you are working in an organization, has your organization properly planned something for, you know, your return to work or whatever that plan looks like, and are you happy with it? Does it make you feel comfortable? Thank you. So many questions have come up. We want to go next into looking at, I'm wondering if we can actually bring up one of the audience questions. There's been really good ones that have come up, and I'd love to start with Sandra's. So Sandra has mentioned it is a war for talent. Companies are looking for and putting a lot of emphasis on talent acquisition. So are you seeing companies put any effort in talent retention? And Sandra, if you feel like elaborating on that, please feel free.
No, it's just along that. I see a lot of requests out there for talent acquisition, but I don't know if they're putting enough in retention right now. Yes, they are dealing with a pandemic. Yes, there's a possible return to work, but it costs a lot more money to hire, onboard, and train a new employee than it is to retain a good one, right? So I'm kind of feeling, and that's what I'm seeing on the market, and that's why I would ask the question of you three, being the work you do and with different companies, do you actually see retention work being emphasized?
I can maybe jump in if nobody minds. I might not have as deep of a view because we work with the people and culture as part of also like or the whole organization, not necessarily specifically with them in terms of those. But what we've seen is helping organizations to set some of those strategic priorities that it is becoming maybe a little bit more of a focus prioritization than it was before, because they are finding, like you mentioned, they are finding it very difficult to find people. They post the job postings and they're not getting any candidates, right? It's taking longer and longer for them to fill those positions. And so it's starting slowly, the realization is coming home to say, well, that just means that we need to increase an emphasis on keeping the people in the organization and making an environment for them better. And so what we've seen, what I've seen so far is how it manifests itself is a lot of training and a lot of emphasis on making sure that the managers have the right skills to create the environment for the people within the organizations, right? And so, and I mean, we've been doing a lot of this work before, but there's more and more of sort of requests for this type of work is to make sure that leaders know how to lead, right? That it's not about managing the work, it's about managing the environment in which people work. And it's about making sure that they can actually look after the people and create the environment within those people can thrive, rather than sort of being able to just take the work and relay that work to the board or to the executive or sort of other leaders within the organization. So this is what we've seen in terms of the clients that we work with, is that emphasis on, yes, we need to retain people, and how we do that is focusing on the managers, making sure that we're giving them the skills that they potentially did not have before, and because of how the people get promoted in the organizations, to make sure that they understand how to actually work with people, how to lead them, and how to create those sort of productive, thriving environments.
And if I could just jump in actually on that, I would say a lot of organizations aren't doing a great job around retention, Sandra. I think you're absolutely right. I think they are firefighting right now and reacting. I mean, look, you go to the Tim Hortons in my area, it's not even open 24/7 anymore, right? They don't have enough staff. Tim Hortons, like, when would we ever see that? Same thing with McDonald's down the street. I mean, I'm on the South Shore. I'm not in the middle, well, I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere, but I'm not that far in the middle of nowhere. It's insane. And if you think about, I don't know how many of you have gone to a restaurant lately, the service isn't great. And it's not because they don't want the service to be great. It's because they're having trouble finding talent, finding, like you just need a high school diploma, not even, right? You could be in grade 10 and you could be, servicing at a restaurant. So that's just the basics of what we're seeing at the grocery store. The lines are longer. Everybody's new and training. Onboarding is not very good because a lot of companies don't know how to onboard with the systems that they do or don't have, in a pandemic world, right? So I would say what we're seeing a lot of is organizations. Look, the organizations that got it right, there are a number of Fortune 500 companies that and we can see them on LinkedIn congratulating their drivers, congratulating, their customer service reps, introducing you, humanizing, right? The employees that they have there to say, we really appreciate what they're doing. I mean, just saying that on LinkedIn is not enough in terms of engagement, right? But some of these organizations have done a great job in terms of what their onboarding looks like. You're meeting different touch points within the organization. Your manager knows that they've got a talent map for you. You know what that map looks like in terms of succession planning, in terms of development. You know what tools are there for you. You know that, remote or not remote, who's on your team, who you can reach out to. Those are the organizations that are very difficult for us to headhunt anybody out of, because even if the employee isn't where they really want to be just yet, they know the company has a plan for them that they've been a part of, right? So they've said, I want to move into this. And the company has said, we're going to get you there this way. And sometimes it'll be, okay, listen, it's going to be an extra year, but we still have a plan for you. Is this still what you want to do? The ones that are struggling are the ones that are saying, I don't even really know my manager. My manager doesn't know what I have to go through. They don't understand the realities of my work. They care that my Zoom is on and they make me do meeting after meeting after meeting. And all they talk about is me coming back. And I'm exhausted, right? So we need to have a shift. And I think organizations that, are replacing leaders oftentimes is because they're realizing, okay, the leaders don't even understand who makes up their team. They have no idea how to, retain and engage. It's just about doing more, and people are doing the most that they can with less. So I think, you want to be a great organization, talk to your employees, get to know who they are, figure out what's important to them. Find out if they're really tired, and don't just, oh, you're tired, do more. No, you're tired. What can we do to help you, to give you support? We can't hire somebody for you tomorrow, but we're going to go and try and identify somebody, or we don't have the budget for it. What else can we do? Can we shift things here? Get to know them. Without that, forget it. We're coming for your people.
I love your energy, Sam, I have to say. Thank you. I feel everything you're saying makes just complete sense, and everyone in the chat is really agreeing with you. I do just have a quick follow-up question, and it relates to everyone's points on, okay, you all spoke about these amazing organizations that are agile, that are pivoting, and that care for their employees. And how would a job seeker, an external person, be able to identify those organizations and the ones that are truly doing what they say that they do and truly have that culture, and not talk about it like Samantha has mentioned before, but not actually act on it? So from an outsider point of view, how would you figure that out? Follow up to Sam, but also to Samantha and Andrew.
Yeah, I can jump in with something that we've done, which has been really helpful. And I think that I don't know if it's because we've done it and people are talking, that candidates are taking the initiative, or if it's just the fact that people are operating from a bit more of a curious or empowered place. But we've started to introduce coffee chats, like virtual coffee chats, for every role. And at first it was for, certain roles. And now it's really just a peek behind the curtain before you enter the interview process and the hiring funnel. Get a look at who the team is, what the culture is like, the expectations of the role. It's an opportunity to ask your questions. And so what I'm seeing now, particularly because we've put more of an effort on our employer branding and putting ourselves out there and showing a bit more behind the curtains and how we are as a team, but also how we've been throughout this kind of time of change, that people are taking more of an initiative to book the coffee chats with us. Hey, I saw your LinkedIn post. Hey, I saw the social media ad. Hey, I saw that this is, an event that you guys held that looked really great. And we're getting people who are saying, before I even consider applying, I want to know what it's like there. And I really think that, of course, we can't meet every single candidate, particularly. I mean, we're a relatively small organization right now. So for larger organizations, I realize that is not a concept that can scale super easily, and that you may need to have some kind of filtering process to spend time with the candidates that would all really make most sense for the business and for the team. But I think it's a great initiative on the future employees' part to really say, hang on, hiring processes right now are sometimes arduous, they're long, and it's a commitment. We've got the easy LinkedIn apply, we've got different ways that we can cut corners, but really once you're in, we want to know who you are, where you've been, where you headed, to really assess if we've got a good fit. And I think that by the candidate showing the interest and taking the initiative to say, I really want to be invested in the culture and where the company is going before I enter this process, it shows a great degree of awareness, of enthusiasm, and willingness to find the right fit. And I'm happy to have the conversations, those types of conversations with people, because we're particularly open to feedback. And if there's something, a Glassdoor review, something that you're like, hey, this didn't sit right, we welcome that. I want to know, what are your red flags about the organization so that we can address those up front? What are your questions about the team you'll be working with, so I could be totally transparent that this will be an environment that you will thrive in or not. And then we go into the process aligned. So not a one size fits all answer, but I do think that being more proactive and trying to figure out beyond what's available on the hiring page or the job descriptions or the ads, try to find someone in the organization who can answer some of your questions, and who you can kind of poke holes and see what it's like, and find out early on if you have an interesting fit.
It seems like there's a lot of amazing work happening at GoldCast, that's for sure. Thank you.
So if I could just add on to that in terms of what candidates can do, like I think from a first step, candidates need to think about what it is that they want to do. Like if ever there was a time where you can reflect and take a couple minutes and be like, what is it that I want to do in my next role versus reacting? Because if you're just going to react to every kind of LinkedIn message saying, hey, I've got an opportunity for you, and you're just looking for the highest bidder, that doesn't set you up for success. Right? But if you want an organization that's going to invest in you, or you want to be developed, you want to work in a certain area, you want to work on, maybe you're somebody who, wants to build processes, systems, you want to build departments. And if that's what you're passionate about, that's great. But if you've come from an organization that kind of already has all of that set up, you may be frustrated moving into a role where you're like, wait a second, I don't actually have some of the basic systems and processes in place. And so I'm going to look at failure pretty soon, because, they're not paying employees what we were paying at our old organization, or everything is so messy. I wasn't expecting to get into this. So you really need to be very clear as a candidate, I think, or as a job seeker, in terms of what is it that you want to do. And sometimes, like if somebody's been, 5 years in one role and kind of 2 years here, then 1 year there, I'm like, wait a second, what's going on now? Like, what were you doing for those 5 years? Why did you stay in that organization for that amount of time? Oh, well, they invested in me and I developed my skills in X, Y, and Z. Okay, so maybe that's important to you, right? And take the time to ask the right questions. It's so important. I feel like a lot of times candidates are surprised, when we solicit feedback of, okay, how did your interview go? Oh, I think they liked me. No, that's not what I'm asking. I'll find out soon enough if they liked you. Did you like them? Like, what kind of date is that? Oh, I hope he asked me out. I hope she asked me out again. Like, no, like, do you want to go on another date with them? Can you see yourself marrying them, right? Ask the questions that are important for you, so that when I call you in 6 months and be like, hey, how are things going? Is the role what you thought it was? That you actually take my call. You're like, yes, it is. I'm so excited, versus I don't know why this happened. Well, a lot of times people are not as strategic as they need to be around their own careers. So, and I think that you really need to have that conversation. Hey, why is it that this role is being replaced? I know it's a confidential replacement. Why are you looking for somebody again? How long were they in place? How long was the person before that one in place? Well, if it's a high turnover, and we all know there's companies out there that it's just easy in, easy out. Use LinkedIn, right? To see who else was in that role. Maybe reach out to people who had already left the organization to say, hey, I'm interviewing with this company. I want to know more about them. Because once they've left, most people, they're going to be very honest about what goes on in the inside, and it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of people to get information on a company when they're going through the interview process. It's not always appreciated or accepted that you're going through other channels to get information. So you need to be a little bit mindful of that. But I would say now is the time to really be clear. And by the way, you should be looking for a 10% increase over where you are now. And if you're in HR, you should be, or if you're in the position of leadership, you need to be okay with that, right? Somebody's been in, a role making, 80,000, their next role should come at about 88, as long as they don't change every 5 minutes. Right? So there should be a small bump in comp. So you need to write all that stuff down. What is your compensation now? And if you just want more money, go see your boss and ask for more money and tell them why, but don't leave for more money, but have that conversation with your manager. Or if you're not being developed, you're not being invested in, you want to get involved in other projects. It's like a marriage. You don't just walk out. Well, you shouldn't just walk out on your partner without letting them know what's wrong. So this is an opportunity to say, hey, I'm not as happy as I could be because I really want to do X, and see what they're going to come to you with. this is your time, right? So maximize it.
I love your answer, Sam. And it got me thinking, listening to you, it's inspiring. Like, yeah, you know what? I should advocate for myself. Not everyone is comfortable doing that. So what advice do you have for people who feel they're not in the right situation, they're not being appreciated the right way by the employer, but there's a level of fear in terms of having that conversation?
If you are afraid about having conversations like that, maybe it's time for you to go, right? Maybe it's time for you to look for a different organization. But sometimes it's just that you are not comfortable, like you said, Valerie, advocating for yourself. And it's not that the person is so scary. Your manager maybe, is not a bad person. It's just you are uncomfortable. And I would say, keep in mind, this is business. It's not really personal, right? You have a skill that you're getting paid for. So it's okay to have a conversation around, this is what I would like, or that I remember going to see my boss and saying, hey, I feel like I may be underpaid and this is why. And they're, twisted up the, monster data and, oh yeah, but we're over here and we're doing this. And it's okay, whatever. And, it was never enough money. And that's why I went and worked for myself, I guess. So you can do that also. But, I think you need to get confident in expressing why you feel you are entitled to X, and it's not because you bought a bigger house, you want to send your kids to camp. It has to be some concrete, hey, this is what I was hired to do. Here are my accomplishments. This is what I'm asking for, so that's a starting point. And otherwise, I think you need to be very clear on what it is, what type of environment you want to work in. And maybe you need to look for a different organization where you can have a better, kind of open door policy with your manager.
Can I jump on that one as well? Because I totally agree, Sam. I totally agree with what you're saying, in that we need to be our own biggest advocates and we need to come prepared with concrete information. But it is a conversation which is a two-way street, right? And I think that there's something to be said about the fact that sometimes just initiating the conversation is the hardest part. Maybe people are so comfortable talking about themselves and how great they are all day long, but they're not the ones to start that conversation. And so I do think that there's a responsibility, at least a shared responsibility, of the leaders to open the space for those conversations to happen and to initiate those types of conversations. Because I think a lot of that fear is, what if they think I'm unhappy when I'm not, but I just want a little bit extra, extra recognition, extra money, extra time off, extra projects, extra responsibilities, whatever it is. And there's this preconceived idea of how, or there's a fear of how they will be perceived in initiating such a conversation. Whereas I think it lowers the barrier and the fear to have that conversation when you are met with open arms and you are met with a landscape, a space in which you can explore some of these things. And so I think these, Sam's earlier point, I think these conversations happen a little too late. And if it's a more regular part of the process and initiated by the team members, by the leads, by the organization, then it takes away some of the weight, some of the pressure of having to start this. And it becomes something, it becomes part of the culture, it becomes part of the expectation, it becomes more free-flowing in how we address these types of things, and less scary, I would say.
That's such a great point, Samantha. Yes, absolutely. Managers need to know who's on their team and what motivates and drives them, and if they're happy, and they should be having those one-on-one check-ins, right? And if you don't have one-on-ones with your team and everything's always a team status, then they haven't established the trust for your employee to be able to confide in you or to share how they're feeling. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. If I may add, and just build on both of amazing answers, I guess there's definitely a responsibility on both sides, right? I mean, there's a responsibility on the employer side to create, or on the manager side to create, that psychological safety for people to feel safe to start those conversations. But on the other side, from employees, there's also responsibility to be in charge of your own career, right? I mean, one way to think about it is your career is like a project, right? You are the project of yourself. and what are the skills or what are the things that you need to be able to take yourself, your project forward. And if that's, if you identify, if you can like have that self-reflection, self-awareness to identify that, hey, having those difficult conversations is what's preventing me from moving forward, well, then that's a skill that you need to build to be able to keep moving forward in your career, right? It's taking ownership of that process. And there's a ton of different resources that are available that talk about it and help people to get better at having those difficult conversations, whether it is just from books or online courses or any other type of institutions that offer a safe environment to practice building those skills before you actually have to apply them in your job.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for your insights and your tips and advice. Really has, I think, all of us thinking in terms of, how we show up as well in the workplace, and in terms of starting those conversations and having the courage to do so. So thank you. There had been an earlier question from Guy. Guy, I don't know if you have a follow-up question or a comment that you wanted to share regarding the value. Do employers see the value or true value in their employees?
I'm wondering in the recruitment process, if employers actually take the time to understand what the value of someone is bringing in versus I have the budget for a headcount, I have a chair to fill, it's 37.5 hours a week, and we need to fill that chair, right? I've had the conversation where, and Sam was talking about the onboarding process before, that's not so good, very politically correct, because sometimes it really sucks. And you think, okay, people are busy, they can't onboard people. Why do you make your new staff suffer this excessive amount of time instead of saying, okay, we'll bring you in, like, let's start with this, and then, just feel free to venture out and we'll add value, instead of just saying, you came in, this is the time, this is the deal.
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations are not truly uncomfortable yet. I think that they don't see what I'm seeing anyway, what many of us are seeing in terms of there's going to be a lot of organizations that are going to be hurting pretty soon. Like when I'm starting to see people raise their hand saying, hey, I'm not happy, can we have a conversation? And I'm sitting back going, oh my God, that company is going to lose that individual. Like, that's serious, right? Or when you see, part of, Videotron's leadership team leaving, you see Nespresso with, high turnover in their HR department, and yet it's the biggest moneymaker out of their entire portfolio, right? So how the heck is that happening? There's so many examples out there. I think that because organizations still think, oh, well, it's a pandemic, people are hurting, right? So I can bring them in and it's going to be very transactional. And we know that as in Quebec, bringing in, so, we're behind right now in terms of opening the doors for immigration. There are a lot of people who are waiting still to come in. So we are still missing talent externally. But a lot of people have been put into very junior roles, not realizing when they first come into Canada or when they first come to Montreal that, oh, well, I don't speak French, so I'm going to take this role like in production, let's say, at minimum wage when I was an engineer in my country. Pretty soon, they're not going to be offered just those roles, right? And so there's a lot of organizations that have been making a lot of money on the backs of new arrivals, and they haven't been able to now in the past year. And as those people start leaving, I think that's when they're going to start hurting. So that frame of mind of very transactional, easy in, easy out, it doesn't matter, just bring them in. That person didn't work out, bring in the next one. those organizations are going to start to really hurt pretty soon, and rightly so, quite honestly. But I think companies have to do a much better job, because and this is not going to last forever, but I think the data shows that the next 2 years are going to be critical for organizations to have the right people in the right place.
I would also say that I think value is at this point a little subjective, and I think there are blurred lines between the business value and personal value. And I think that the business will typically have an understanding of the business value a person filling a role can bring, and that's usually where the buck stops. And I think there's more conversations that need to be had of going back to some of our earlier conversations of understanding the motivators of our team members. What does value look like to you? How do you feel? How would you feel valued as a person? Because I think understanding what motivates the individual, you can make space for opportunities to grow, to learn, to communicate, to career trajectory. It will look different for different people, and we can't have a one size fits all when it comes to understanding value. And I think there's a real lack of transparency in organizations. There's a very clear expectation as far as output and results and deliverables. But what do you require as a person to make that happen? What will make you feel fulfilled, happy, productive, like you're part of a team? That's missing from the conversation of value, I feel. And that if we're both going to feel, I say both being in the employee seat, but also from an organizational perspective, I think there needs to be some alignment on how are we measuring this? How are we assessing it? What are the systems in place in which we can evaluate, have the conversations, see if we're on the right track, and make improvements and adjustments where needed. I think there's a lot falling through the cracks when it comes to value, and there are people who are feeling like they are going undervalued, who have the output, right? And so they're looking at the business results and they're saying, I'm helping, I'm providing value to the business, and it needs to be a two-way street. And I think what this last year and a half has shown us is that I think our employees are really stepping into the driver's seat in saying, this is, what's in it for me? Kind of what have you done for me lately? And I think we need to be paying more attention on how that value is reciprocated.
Yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to maybe echo and synthesize everything both that Samantha and Sam have mentioned in terms of, I think that there's probably, the lack of that strategic maybe vision in terms of on organization and forward looking on being both sides of the street, right? What are the right skills that will bring value to the organization, and how do you actually evaluate and find those people? But at the same time, on the other side of it is what value, as Samantha has so eloquently put, what value do you bring to the people that you're actually bringing in, right? In terms of, other than making it a very transactional relationship, what Sam mentioned. And so I think likewise that maybe the companies are not there yet in terms of feeling the full pain of it, but they're still there, at least at some levels of the organizations, they're starting to realize, and it's a matter of time before it sort of escalates itself to the level where it's a pain that they cannot bear anymore, right? Because it's going to start hitting them sort of where it hurts the most, right? In the bottom line, because either people are leaving or they're not delivering, and it's going to affect the bottom line, and that's where they will start paying attention to it.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your perspectives. We want to know now if we can look at specifically looking at upskilling and reskilling. Recently we saw that there's some research from the World Economic Forum that says that half of all employees around the world need to upskill and reskill by 2025 to really embrace new responsibilities, especially now that there's a lot more automation and new technologies. It looks like so upskilling and reskilling is more important than ever. However, not all organizations are dealing with it the same way or dealing with it at all. So what do you think is the most significant issue to address for organizations when it comes to these upskilling and reskilling programs, and what may be a major challenge you see that organizations are facing, when it comes to successfully operationalizing them? Whoever feels like going for it.
Maybe I can kick it off.
Yes,
but
go for it.
and maybe it just builds on my previous point in terms of the major stumbling block to implementing these skills building programs is the what we've seen anyway, and maybe this is a selection bias because these are the people that we work with, but having a lack of the strategic vision of how it links to what the organization actually wants to accomplish, right? Because when we think about sort of achievement of results, or like, let's say if the organization has a particular purpose and they spend a lot of time on making sure that they have the right strategy, so to speak, from the business side, but they maybe are not spending nowhere near enough time, not necessarily equal, but just in terms of accomplishing what they want to accomplish on the culture and on the people side, making sure that to be able to accomplish the strategy, they have a clear understanding of what kind of culture do they want, what kind of culture do they need, what types of behaviors do they want, and what are the right skills that they need in the people and the progression of those people within the organization to be able to actually execute on that strategy. I think that's a huge gap for a number of organizations, because to be effective at it, right? Like, I mean, organizations can throw a whole bunch of money and give, a whole bunch of different skills to their employees, but how do you know that these are actually the right skills that the employees need, or that the ones that they want? And so it's that homework aspect, or kind of like the initial aspect, pre-work that needs to be done to understand that what you're going to be doing, the skills that you're going to be focusing on, that they're going to be the right skills for the right people for the right purpose, and having that connection from those particular training courses or progression sort of programs, actually linking them to business outcomes in some way, or to the purpose, to the business goals that the organization wants to accomplish.
Yeah, I love that. And if I can build on it, I think there are some factors that need to be taken into account. So what Andrea was just talking about, of like the vision and the strategy, is what we refer to as kind of the team orientation, or the line of sight. Like, I want to see where we're going and what I need to do to evolve to fit into that picture. But in order for that to be successful, as you mentioned, knowing what the objectives are, knowing what success looks like, what are the results we're going for, what do we do if we fall off track, and what role do I play in that? Another factor I would say is the personal orientation. So having those regular assessments, and this could be done through role scorecards or one-on-one feedback, or regular kind of career coaching, evolution planning, but having a consistent check-in of, am I at where I'm expected to be? Am I performing in the way, with the skills that I have and the knowledge and expertise that I bring to the table, in a way that meets the requirements of the role and of the business, as well as the expected value moving forward. Being in a startup, this is particularly a reality for us, is that a lot of people, I entered Goldcast in a marketing capacity because that was my background. And I shifted internally. It's not reserved for startups, but it's entirely a possibility that the role that you come in to fill becomes redundant and is no longer needed. And in our case, we still need marketing, and it was for a different reason. But just to say that your expected value moving forward can change from the time that you come into an organization. And so having a framework to look at, where are we going? What is the future? 6 months, 12 months, 2 months out, we see that your current function may be a little less required, but you bring value in these core areas. So we see this role opening up for you. Companies without that foresight, it's really difficult to maximize and really optimize the talent that they do have. And they're going to find themselves starting from scratch because they didn't think how they can leverage the people who are already committed to the mission, who already want to see it grow, who have skills that could be helpful in different parts of the business. And finally, I think a last factor that I would add for today is that looking at some sort of benchmarking. What is the industry average? If you look at, if you're a marketing director, if you're an HR director, whatever your title, what are the skills required in the updated job descriptions that you're seeing today, it's very possible that the landscape has changed, that technology has changed, that the demands of our audience and candidates have changed, and therefore, audience consumers, we want to make sure that we've got our fingers on the pulse of what's needed in today's market. And I think that looking at external factors to help yourself continually evolve is really important. And then you have a really holistic view of where we're at, where we're going, and how you fit in that future picture. And then you can start to do a skills gap analysis of what's needed, what's missing, where can I improve before it's too late, right? You can start actively developing in those areas in real time, so that by the time you get there, you're favorably positioned.
Thank you, Samantha. That's definitely a lot to consider, and would be great if the organizations adopt that, go in that direction. Sam, was there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think, I think people would be surprised by how many organizations, well-known companies that are here, privately owned organizations, just don't even have necessarily the technology yet, that they're still working off of, this internal knowledge. And as their workforce is retiring, they're taking that knowledge with them. And so, they don't even have people capturing the processes and the systems, let alone a technology to capture it, right? So, I'm thinking about one organization in consumer packaged goods. They're literally the leader in their vertical, and one of their plant managers was counting product by hand. Like, there's SAP for that, right? Like, you don't actually have to count it twice a day. So he was very good at getting product out the door. And so nobody, in the head office noticed. But then when we were looking to replace the plant manager, so this is something that this individual's been doing. And they're selling across the country, right? To the Costco's and Walmarts. And I mean, it's insane. There was one client that we were working with that they were moving their catalog of, whatever, screws and widgets and this and that to online to an iPad, and the workforce resisted the change, right? Their BDMs resisted that because they knew exactly where they could find the product on which page. And so they were kind of freaked out by that. So there's a lot, in terms of, it's not just about bringing in new technology and training existing, your employees on that. It's kind of that, insecurity that a lot of employees have around the new technology. And I know what I'm really good at. And now you're going to take that away from me, and you're bringing in this technology that I have to learn, and I'm not going to be as sharp with my customers. Right. So that takes time, and it takes, the right people on the team to support your employees through that. So I think, when we think about upskilling, it's not just about the technology, but it's making sure that you have the right people in the organization to help with that transition, and kind of reduce the barriers to those people's success as well.
Thank you so much for all of your answers. And it really gives us food for thought in terms of how we can improve upskilling or reskilling within organizations, and also take charge of that for ourselves as well, and being a little bit more proactive in terms of finding out what we need to do to make ourselves ready for the future of work. You guys have been phenomenal. Sam, Samantha, Andre. I feel we could stay here all afternoon just listening to your insights. And we had so many more questions, not only from the team, but from the audience as well. And unfortunately, we won't be able to get to many of them during the session. However, we do invite you all to connect with Sam, Samantha, and Andre on LinkedIn. These are definitely people you want to know, continue to engage with. So definitely connect with them, and we'll share their LinkedIn profiles in the chat. As a last question to wrap up, for each of you, how do we take everything we've learned over this time during the pandemic and apply it moving forward? How do we take some of these lessons to hopefully impact positive change going forward?
I would say get to know who's on your team. if you are in a position of leadership, I think it's really important now for your career also, but just for the success of your team and your organization and your own success, is to really get to know the people who are on your team, see what motivates them, see what they're dealing with, and help create a plan for them to ensure that, not just that you retain them, but that they feel connected to you and to the organization.
I would say seek to understand. It's been one of my greatest lessons of this year so far. Seek to understand why things are the way they are, why people are resistant to change, why people are eager for change. The more you understand about yourself, about your organization, about your team, I think the better solutions will come to the surface, because oftentimes we are seeing symptoms of what isn't working, and we are not digging deep enough to get to the core of the issue of why people are unhappy, why people want things to be done a certain way or not. And if we really seek to understand the people behind the decisions and behind the organizations, I think there's a level of relatability, and we'll find that oftentimes anyway, we have a similar mission, we want the same things, and things are getting lost in translation through communication, through digital, the digital reality, and a little effort in understanding who we're working with and why things are the way they are and why we want to forge a new path. The sooner we can get aligned and find solutions and work together to make them happen.
I think from mine end, this is maybe, we'll again build on the answers Sam and Samantha has already given, but in terms of getting to know others and getting to know yourself, to establish or to kind of for yourself and to help others to establish boundaries and actually stick to those boundaries. Because as we're moving forward, as we sort of mentioned at the beginning, is there's a lot of change. The way that we worked before is changing. The way organizations have worked before is changing. The way we communicate is changing. And what that means is that if before a lot of those boundaries were set by sort of like the way things are done, now that those systems are getting broken down, so are the boundaries. And so a lot of the time, we're either ourselves, we're crossing some of those boundaries, right? I mean, working from home, let's say if you are actually working from home, when are you at work and when are you not at work? And being honest with yourself to make sure that you are creating time for yourself, to disconnect and to focus on yourself as well. And likewise, creating those opportunities for others, right? Because other people are in the same boat as you. And that, that ability to set those boundaries and to actually follow through with those, to understand them, comes with self-awareness and awareness of others. So it's like Sam and Samantha mentioned, get to know others and what's sort of like driving them, get to know yourself, understand what's important to you, and be deliberate about setting those boundaries and those goals for yourself as you move forward.
Thank you so much, Andre. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Sam, for the gems that you've shared during this session, the wisdom, the tips that organizations can take with them. We as employees can also use as we continue to navigate the next steps and whatever the new normal will be. So thank you again for saying yes to participating in this panel discussion. It's been a pleasure listening to you, listening to your perspectives, and thank you for your honesty. It was such an authentic conversation, and we really appreciate that you guys are saying things as they are. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to hand over to Emilie.
Thank you, Valerie. Well, just want to say a special thank you to Valerie for organizing this incredible, thought-provoking discussion and getting this great, oh sorry, I thought I was muted for a second, and getting this great group of panelists. So thank you so much, Sam, Samantha, Andre. Really, really great learning from each one of you and having this meaningful conversation. To all the participants, thank you. Thank you for joining us once again in Powering Up with Power Skills. Have fun, enjoy the summit. Network with professionals, try to find people that you can connect with on, on a more natural level, and try to find people for your next potential transition. As we spoke about today, making sure that you're really getting to know the culture in an organization and the team and the people you're working with. Take this opportunity here at Power Skills to really make those authentic connections, to really help you explore, workplace trends, look at where you want to be next, and help you to navigate your career smoothly and successfully into the future of work. So up next, we have so many panel discussions today, as well as sessions. We do have one of our participants today, Guy, is going to be in the I Did It My Way session from 4 to 5:30, which is a session on professionals who do things their own way and how they go about to achieving success. We also have building meaningful university community partnerships at 5 o'clock. We also have 3 steps to social media success for solopreneurs, and we have a panel discussion on mental health in the workplace. So we have lots of great conversations coming up. Please stay tuned and join us for what's next. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andre, Sam, and Samantha. Thank you. Oh, great, Valerie. I saw you just said that. Okay, I should have prepared that. Great, thank you.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm going to just get it off live.
Able to pause
Okay.
the live stream.
Why is it still?